The favor, you're 34 years old. You passed the bar on your second attempt. You clerked for 3 years under a judge who barely remembered your name, then spent 6 more grinding through a small practice in a mid-sized city. Divorce cases, DUIs, landlord disputes. Nothing that changes the world. Nothing that pays well enough to justify the debt you're still carrying from law school. Your mortgage is $2,100 a month. Your student loans are $680. Your car payment is $420. You're not broke, you're what people politely call stretched. You became a lawyer because you believed in something, you're not sure you remember what, then Marcus calls. You went to law school together. He's a defense attorney now. Always well-dressed, always a newer car, always a restaurant you can't quite afford. He takes you to lunch, orders wine without looking at the price, and gets to the point somewhere between the appetizer and the main course. I have a client, he says. Small possession charge. First offense, kid's got a future. You say, what do you need from me? He looks at you the way people look when they're deciding if you're smart enough to understand what they're really asking. Then he says, just be fair. You're a newly appointed municipal judge. The case comes through your docket 3 weeks later, weak evidence, questionable search. You dismiss it on a procedural technicality. It's the right call, probably, maybe, you tell yourself it's the right call. Marcus sends you a bottle of scotch 2 days later. Single malt, expensive. You keep it, level 2. The envelope, 6 months later, Marcus calls again. Different client, DUI, third offense. This one's harder to justify, the evidence is clean, the arrest was clean. The man blew a 0.19. Marcus meets you at a parking garage on the 3rd level late afternoon when most people have already gone home. He hands you a manila envelope without saying anything. You don't open it in front of him. Inside, $8,000, cash, crisp hundreds, rubber banded in 2 stacks. You sit in your car for 22 minutes. You think about your wife, your daughter. The loan payment due Friday. You think about the man who blew a 0.19. You think about him for exactly 22 minutes. Then you go home and put the envelope in your sock drawer, underneath the ones you never wear. The case comes through. You find a problem with the breathalyzer calibration record, a real problem technically, the kind you might have noticed anyway if you'd looked hard enough. Case dismissed. The man drives home to his family, you drive home to yours. The $8,000 pays off your car, you sleep fine that night, that's the part that scares you later, you slept fine. Level 3, the regular. You're 38 now, Marcus isn't your only source anymore. There's Patricia, a defense attorney who handles organized crime cases, quiet, professional, always pays within 48 hours. There's Sal, a bail bondsman who sends referrals. There's Tors, a developer who needs zoning disputes settled in specific ways. The system runs simply, they call. You find whatever needs to be found, a procedural error, a credibility issue, a suppression motion granted more generously than it deserves. The tools of your trade, used for purposes your trade never intended. The fees are $5,000 for small cases, $15,000 for felonies, $30,000 for anything with real exposure. It goes through a shell LLC your accountant set up. Consulting fees, the accountant doesn't ask questions. You pay him well enough that asking would cost him more than staying quiet. You're making $180,000 a year on top of your judge's salary. You buy a lake house and tell your wife it's the investment portfolio. She's happy. You don't think too hard about what it cost. But real criminals are walking out of your courtroom now. You know what some of them do. You've read the case files, all of it. One night you see a name in the newspaper. Different city, different victim, same man who walked out of your courtroom 8 months ago. You pour a drink and stare at the article. You don't finish it. Then you pour another and you do. You stop reading local crime coverage after that. It's easier. Level 4. The protection. Word travels fast in this world. A state senator reaches out, not directly, through a lawyer you've never met, calling from a number that doesn't come up in any directory. His nephew is facing aggravated assault charges. The victim is a 26-year-old man who spent 12 days in the hospital and will never have full use of his left hand again. 3 witnesses. Surveillance footage. The evidence is overwhelming. The fee is $75,000. You sit on it for a week. You genuinely intend to say no. Then you start thinking about what happens if you say no. These people know what you've already done. Not vague suspicions, they know. The scotch, the envelopes, the LLC, they knew before they ever called. You understand this clearly for the first time. You were never choosing. You were being evaluated. The choice was made for you the moment you kept that first bottle. You take the case. You find an issue with the chain of evidence on the surveillance footage. The senator's nephew pleads to a misdemeanor. Probation, no prison. The senator considers you a confirmed asset. Within 18 months, he gets you appointed to the Superior Court. Bigger docket. More visibility, more exposure, more money. You're being moved up the board by someone else's hand, and every square you land on takes you further from anything you could walk back from. Level 5. The architect, you don't just rule on cases anymore. You shape how cases reach you. Defense attorneys who know the system file in your court deliberately. Prosecutors who don't go home wondering why they keep losing on technicalities. You've developed a reputation as a judge with high standards, a judge who doesn't tolerate sloppy work. Law journals have mentioned your name. A clerk tells you at her going-away dinner that you're the reason she went into law. You smile and say thank you. You now control case assignment for your district. Routine paperwork. Nobody thinks about it, but case assignment is everything when you know what you're doing with it. A RICO case lands 18 defendants. Money laundering, corruption reaching into city government. You assign it to a judge who has his own reasons to move slowly. He buries it in continuances for 2 years. Witnesses relocate. The lead prosecutor gets transferred. 14 defendants walk or take minimal pleas. The network keeps operating. You receive $400,000 moving through accounts in Panama and Cyprus before landing somewhere your wife has never seen a statement from. You have $2.3 million your family doesn't know about. You own property in 4 states, but the case files accumulate in your memory in ways you can't organize. There was a trafficking case 2 years ago. You know what ruling you made, you know why. You allow yourself to think about it for 10 seconds at a time. That's the rule you made for yourself. 10 seconds, then you move on. Level 6. The system, you're 49. You've been appointed to the federal bench. The Senators Network made it happen. 4 politicians, 2 donor bundlers, 1 strategically placed editorial endorsement. Your confirmation hearing lasted 2 days. Nobody asked the questions that would have ended it. Federal judge, lifetime appointment. The word that starts circulating in certain circles is untouchable. The operation at this level doesn't look like what you started with. There are no envelopes in parking garages. There is instead a quiet ecosystem of influence, a ruling on asset forfeiture that benefits specific organizations without naming them. A sentencing guideline interpretation that creates useful exceptions, jurisdictional decisions that route sensitive cases to more predictable courts. Every ruling has a legal justification, meticulous, well-reasoned, occasionally cited by other judges who have no idea what they're citing. You make corruption look like scholarship, which is the most dangerous kind. You read about Mark Ciavarella around this time. A judge in Pennsylvania who sentenced more than 3,000 juveniles to a private detention facility for cash. Children, some as young as 10, minor offenses, sometimes first offenses. Sometimes things that should never have resulted in detention at all. Cash for kids. When it came out, they put it on every news channel for weeks. You watch the coverage and feel what you tell yourself is disgust. Then you sit with it long enough to recognize what it actually is. Recognition. You and Ciavarella are the same machine running different software. He was sloppy. He left fingerprints everywhere. You've been more careful, but the thing you were selling was identical. You know this, you never say it out loud. You never say it out loud. Level 7, the walls, you're 54 when you first notice something is wrong. A case gets reassigned away from you quietly, no explanation. A defense attorney you've worked with for 4 years stops returning calls. Not delayed, stopped. Then a prosecutor you've clashed with gets appointed to head a new federal corruption task force. The kind of appointment that means someone identified a specific problem and gave someone the mandate to go find it. You read the announcement 3 times, you call the senator, he doesn't answer. His lawyer calls back 90 minutes later, be patient, act normal, nothing to worry about. People who say there's nothing to worry about are always worried. You hire a private investigator, he comes back in 48 hours, there's a rotating surveillance on your car, FBI. They're not hiding it, which means they want you to know, which means they're creating pressure, which means they have enough that they can afford to be visible. You stop using your personal phone. You stop meeting anyone from the network. You go to work. You preside, you act normal. Your wife asks if everything's okay. You say yes. She asks if you're in trouble. You look at her across the table and think about everything you could say and you say, no, everything's fine. She knows you're lying. She's known something for years. She just made her own choice about how much she wanted to know, the same way you made yours. A federal agent leaves a business card in your mailbox on a Thursday afternoon. No note, just the card. Just here, just whenever you're ready, you sit in your car in your own driveway for 40 minutes before you go inside. Level 8, the choice, there are 3 options. You've been over them so many times they've worn grooves in your thinking. Option 1 is to run, you have the accounts, the foreign properties, 2 countries without extradition. You could be gone in 72 hours, but your daughter is 22 and in her second year of law school. She calls every Sunday. She tells you about her classes, her professors, the kind of judge she wants to become. She has named you as the reason she went to law school at all. If you run, she learns the truth. Not the version she could live with all of it. Every dismissed charge, every real criminal who walked because you needed the money. You decide sitting in the driveway that you can't make that her inheritance. Option 2 is to cooperate, go to the FBI. Give them everything, the senator, the network, 20 years of names and cases and transfers. You know enough to burn it all down, witness protection, maybe 7 years, maybe 5. But the people you'd testify against have reached that doesn't end at the courthouse steps. You've seen what happens to people who become liabilities. You've ruled on some of those cases. You remember what the files said about cause of death. Option 3 is to fight. You're a federal judge, you know every procedural tool, you could drag this out for years. But the FBI doesn't surveil sitting federal judges without a case solid enough to survive the scrutiny. They have something, you don't know exactly what. But you know they wouldn't be leaving business cards in mailboxes if they were guessing. You sit in your chambers on a Tuesday morning. Your clerks are at their desks outside. 100 case files on your desk. The law surrounding you on every shelf, every book you read, every case you cited, every principle you built a reputation on and then spent 20 years quietly hollowing out from the inside. Your phone rings, it's the agent. You let it ring 4 times, then you pick it up, you say, "I'd like to speak to someone about making an arrangement." 22 years. That's how long it took from the first bottle of scotch to this phone call. 22 years of decisions that never felt like the last one until they were. The first one felt like nothing. They always do, that's the only way any of this ever starts. The cycle, somewhere in a law school right now, a student is 3 weeks from graduation. Sharp. Idealistic in the way you can only be before the debt becomes real. $200,000 borrowed against a future they haven't seen yet. A job offer that barely covers the monthly interest. And somewhere in that city, someone who knows how to read people is watching that student and making a calculation. They take them to lunch at a restaurant they can't afford. They order wine without looking at the price. They say, "I have a client, small case, first offense, kids got a future." The student listens. The student thinks about the loan statement they opened that morning. The student says yes, and the system continues because the system was never broken. This is how it was built. This is what it is. This is what it has always been. There is no dramatic moment, no single crossroads, no villain who shows up one day and offers you a deal. There is only a lunch, a bottle of wine, a manila envelope, and 22 years of small decisions that compounded into something no one looking at you from the outside would ever believe. You were a judge, you were supposed to be the last line, and that's exactly why they needed you.